If you ever visit the edge of a city and notice that the streets are perfectly built, but no one is using them, leave immediately. I didn't leave. I kept walking deeper into that empty Chinese city because my job told me to, and curiosity told me it was safe. That decision is the reason I'm recording this confession for the channel Unblinking, because what happened there still feels impossible to explain. Before I continue, take 2 seconds to like this video and subscribe to Unblinking if you enjoy slow, realistic horror stories that feel a little too real. It really helps the channel and tells us you want more stories like this. Now let me tell you about the city. People in the region quietly call the Silent District. My name isn't important, but at the time I worked as a drone maintenance technician for a logistics company. My job was simple: travel to different smart city zones across Asia and repair navigation towers that guide delivery drones. Most places were busy and modern, full of traffic and neon signs. But this assignment was different. The location was a newly constructed satellite district outside a large city in China. Thousands of apartments had been built there, along with subway stations, parks, shopping centers, and wide 6-lane roads. Everything was finished, but people never moved in. No one at the company explained why. When I arrived that afternoon, the first strange thing I noticed was the silence. Not peaceful silence, like in the countryside, but a thick, heavy quiet that made even my footsteps sound wrong. The buildings looked new, the glass windows spotless, yet every balcony was empty. It was around 4 in the afternoon, and sunlight reflected off endless rows of identical towers. A light wind pushed trash across the empty road, but there were no cars, no voices, no music from shops. It looked like a perfect city, paused in time. My job was to inspect a navigation tower near the center plaza. The company had received reports that delivery drones entering the district lost their signal for several seconds. Normally, that kind of issue meant interference from a damaged antenna or construction equipment. I expected a quick repair and an early flight home, but something about the place made me uneasy. The moment I stepped off the shuttle bus, the driver refused to enter the inner streets. He dropped me near a gate, pointed toward the skyline, and told me the plaza was about a 10-minute walk. When I asked why he wouldn't drive farther, he just shrugged and said the roads ahead were not used. That answer didn't make sense. Perfect roads were stretching straight into the city, freshly painted and completely clear. Still, the driver left quickly, and the bus disappeared down the highway. Primera dua, Eselon. At first I told myself the stories were exaggerated rumors. Empty developments exist in many countries when investors build faster than residents arrive. Maybe the project simply failed. Still, the deeper I walked, the more wrong the place felt. Traffic lights kept switching from green to red, even though no vehicles were there. Digital billboards flickered with advertisements for restaurants that had never opened. The automated subway entrance lights turned on as I passed, but the station inside was dark. Every system worked perfectly, yet there were no people. I reached the central plaza around 4:25 p.m. The plaza was massive, built around a circular fountain with hundreds of LED lights under the water. Tall apartment towers surrounded the square like silent walls, their windows reflecting the cloudy sky. The navigation tower stood in the middle. It looked like a tall metal pole, covered with signal antennas and sensors that guided drones across the district. My tablet showed a repeating error. Signal loss for exactly 9 seconds, every hour. 9 seconds. That number seemed random at the time. I unpacked my equipment and started the diagnostic scan. The tower was functioning normally, transmitting signals across the entire district. Nothing looked damaged, and the data log showed no interference, but the signal did disappear. Every hour. For 9 seconds, while the scanner ran, I noticed something odd about the plaza fountain. The water jets were active, spraying in carefully timed patterns, but sometimes they paused for a few seconds before starting again. 9 seconds. I checked the system timer on my tablet. 4:32 p.m. Then, something strange happened. All the lights in the plaza flickered once, like a brief power fluctuation. The scanner signal on my tablet vanished for a moment. 10 returned. I checked the timer again. 4:33 p.m. 9 seconds had passed. At that moment, I heard something behind me. Footsteps. They were quiet, but clear, echoing slightly against the empty buildings. I turned around quickly, expecting to see a worker or security guard. No one was there. The plaza remained completely empty. I walked around the fountain, checking the surrounding streets. Every road stretched away without movement. Wind pushed dust along the pavement, and somewhere a loose metal sign clanged softly. I told myself I had imagined it. Traveling alone can make the mind sensitive to small sounds. Maybe the wind moved something that echoed like footsteps. Still, the feeling of being watched didn't disappear. At 4:59 p.m., the signal monitor on my tablet began counting down to the next error. I decided to stand still and observe exactly what happened when the signal dropped. The timer reached 0, and everything stopped. The fountain water froze in midair for a moment before falling again. The scanner screen went black. The wind disappeared. 9 seconds. Then the world continued as normal. But during those seconds, I heard something. Footsteps again. This time, there were many of them. They sounded distant, like people walking through the plaza in different directions. Shoes scraping pavement. Quiet voices. The faint echo of movement. But when the signal returned, the plaza was empty. No people. No movement. Just silence. I replayed the audio recorder on my tablet, expecting nothing. Surprisingly, the recording captured something faint during the signal drop. Footsteps. Multiple footsteps. My first thought was that nearby construction workers were moving around the buildings, and the echoes carried strangely through the plaza, but the buildings looked completely unused. Every entrance was locked. Every shop interior was empty. Around 5:20 p.m., I started walking through the surrounding streets to check signal strength from different angles. The navigation tower worked perfectly outside the plaza, and the connection stayed stable. Only the plaza lost signal, only for 9 seconds. While walking between the towers, I noticed something else unusual. Street cameras were active. Small black lenses mounted on every light pole slowly rotated as if tracking movement. Whenever I passed beneath one, the camera turned slightly to follow me. That meant the city's surveillance system was still running. But who was monitoring it? The control center should have been inside the administrative building near the plaza. I decided to check it before leaving. By the time I returned to the plaza, the sky had turned gray and dim. The tall buildings blocked most of the sunlight, making the square feel colder than before. 5:33 p.m. approached. The timer on my tablet began counting down again. I stood perfectly still in the center of the plaza. 3 seconds. 2. 1. The signal vanished, and for those 9 seconds, the plaza was not empty. I couldn't see anyone clearly, but shapes moved at the edges of my vision. Blurry silhouettes crossing the street, standing near the fountain, walking past storefronts that didn't exist anymore. It felt like watching reflections on glass. Then the signal returned. Everything disappeared. The plaza was empty again. I stood there for several minutes, trying to process what I had just seen. My brain kept searching for a logical explanation. Maybe it was a visual glitch from the lighting. Maybe exhaustion from traveling. Maybe some strange reflection between the glass towers. Still, the footsteps recording on my tablet was real, and the shapes had moved like people. I entered the administrative building at the edge of the plaza. The lobby lights turned on automatically, illuminating rows of empty desks and security monitors. Dust covered the floor even though the building looked newly built. The monitors were still powered. Most cameras showed empty streets across the district, but one screen displayed the plaza fountain, and it wasn't empty. Dozens of people stood around the fountain on the screen, talking and walking normally. Some carried shopping bags. Others sat on benches across the road. The camera timestamp matched the current time, but when I looked through the window behind me, the real plaza was completely empty. I stared back at the monitor again. The people were still there, laughing, walking, living normal lives in a city that no longer existed. I watched the screen until the clock reached the next signal drop. When the timer hit 0, every person on the monitor stopped moving at the same time. The video froze for 9 seconds, then it resumed. But the plaza outside remained empty. At that moment, I realized something disturbing. The surveillance system wasn't showing the present. It was showing a different moment. A moment where the city had residents, where people lived normal lives. And somehow, every hour, for 9 seconds, the signals overlapped. During those seconds, I could hear them, maybe even see them. I left the building quickly after that. The sky outside had turned dark blue, and the plaza lights glowed softly across the empty square. I packed my equipment and started walking back toward the highway gate, but something strange happened as I crossed the plaza. The timer on my tablet suddenly reset. Another signal drop was starting early. The world went silent again. 9 seconds. And this time, I was not alone in the plaza. Dozens of silhouettes moved around me like shadows of another reality. One figure walked directly through the space where I was standing. The moment the signal returned, the plaza was empty again, but I noticed something chilling. My equipment bag had moved several feet across the pavement, as if someone had accidentally kicked it while passing by. I left the district immediately after that. The company never sent another technician there again. Later, I learned something strange about that development project. Construction had been stopped suddenly years earlier. Thousands of residents who had planned to move in were relocated after unexpected structural issues appeared in multiple towers. The district was abandoned before anyone officially lived there, but the surveillance footage I saw showed normal life. Crowds, families, daily routines. No one could explain where that footage came from. Maybe it was corrupted data from an early testing phase. Maybe reflections from nearby signals created a strange overlap in the cameras. Or maybe for those 9 seconds every hour, 2 different moments in time briefly touched. Maybe I imagined silhouettes entirely. Sleep deprivation can do strange things. Still, I sometimes check the signal logs out of curiosity. Even today, the navigation tower in that plaza still reports the same error. Every hour, 9 seconds, no one has repaired it. Maybe stress played tricks on my mind, or maybe some places carry things we simply don't understand. But one thing I believe with certainty is this: everything happens by the will of Allah. Nothing moves, nothing changes, and nothing touches our lives without His knowledge. Everything happens according to Allah's will. Maybe some questions are not meant to be answered. If you enjoyed this story, comment below and tell me what you think really happened in that silent city. And if you want more slow, realistic horror like this, share this video and subscribe to Unblinking so you don't miss the next story.